You wouldn't believe what happened to me on my own ranch. I've spent years working hard to build a peaceful, private property far away from the chaos of city life. But that all came crashing down when one unexpected person decided to take matters into their own hands. It all started with a simple HOA issue, or at least, that's how it looked on the surface. Out of nowhere, the local HOA Karen, a self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, gave hunters access to my land. You heard that right. Without asking, without any warning, she opened the gates to my ranch, letting strangers with rifles roam freely. I never imagined this would be the price I'd pay for living in a community with rules meant to keep things civil. But the real punch came when they shot my prize bull, an animal I had raised and cared for over the years. The heartbreak was real. That bull wasn't just livestock to me. He was a symbol of everything I'd worked for. And now it's gone. So how did it all go down? What's the fallout from this mess? And what will happen next? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. It all started a few months ago when I noticed some strange behavior in the neighborhood. The HOA, which is supposed to be about maintaining order and communication, seemed to be getting more involved in things that were none of their business. First, there were complaints about my fence being too high. Then came the noise complaints, despite the fact that my ranch was on acres of land, far from any neighbors. But none of it prepared me for what came next. One morning, I received a letter from the HOA president, that so-called Karen, with a proposal that made my blood run cold. She said she was giving hunters access to my land for recreational purposes, and that it was a decision made in the best interest of the community. I was stunned. No one had asked me about it. No one had even warned me. They just decided to open up my property to strangers, simply because it fit their vision of the neighborhood. I tried to reach out to her directly, but she just shrugged it off, claiming it was part of some new initiative to bring the community together. And then, just days later, the hunters showed up. The moment I realized what had happened, it was too late. The shot rang out from the woods, and I knew my bull was gone. What kind of community allows this to happen? What was their real agenda? The mystery is deepening, and I'm not backing down. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how wrong everything felt. This wasn't just some small misunderstanding. It was a direct violation of my privacy, my rights, and everything I had worked for. My ranch isn't just a business. It's my home, my livelihood, and my sanctuary. And yet, here was this HOA, with their misguided sense of entitlement, thinking they could make decisions for me without even asking. As the days went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on here than just a bunch of hunters looking for a good time. Why had the HOA president gone to such lengths? Why didn't she consult with me or any of the other property owners? Something didn't add up. I started talking to the other ranchers and neighbors, and what I uncovered only deepened my suspicions. Turns out, Karen wasn't acting alone. A few of the more influential figures in the HOA had been quietly pushing for access to private lands for months, all in the name of community recreation. But it wasn't about recreation, it was about control. Some of these people were looking to cash in, to turn the area into a tourist spot for hunters. They wanted the land to be opened up for more than just a weekend hunt, and who knows what else they might have planned. But none of that explained why my bull had to be the one to pay the price. It wasn't a random shot, it felt personal. And the more I dug, the more I realized that my ranch was being targeted for something bigger. The more I uncovered, the more I knew I needed to take action before they took everything from me. But what was my next move? How far would these people go to get what they wanted? I knew I couldn't just let it slide. The more I thought about everything that had happened, the hunting party, the way the HOA president had practically flaunted her authority, the angrier I became. But anger alone wouldn't get me anywhere. I needed to be smart about this. I needed a plan. Late one night, I received an anonymous tip that turned everything upside down. It was a grainy video sent through a burner email. The footage showed a group of men, clearly hunters, gathered in the woods near my property line, talking about the next big project in the area. From their conversation, it was clear that Karen and the others were part of something much larger. This wasn't just about hunting or community, it was about land deals. They were trying to push through a plan to sell off parcels of ranch land to developers, turning the area into something unrecognizable. The more I listened, the clearer it became that they had their sights set on my land. They had probably been planning this for months, if not years. I couldn't believe it. My prize bull, my livelihood, had been nothing more than collateral damage in their scheme. But the worst part, they were getting bolder. The next step in their plan wasn't just to open up my land to hunters, it was to take it from me entirely. I couldn't let them win, but I also knew that I was up against powerful people. I had no idea how deep this ran, or how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. My next move had to be calculated, but I had to act quickly. If I didn't, I'd lose everything. I started gathering evidence, talking to anyone who might know something, but the more I dug, the more I realized I was walking a dangerous line. And then one evening, when I least expected it, someone came knocking on my door. It wasn't the police. It wasn't even a neighbor. It was someone much closer to the heart of this mess, and they had a warning for me. The man standing at my door wasn't someone I recognized, but there was something about him, his nervous glances, the way he fidgeted with his hands, that made it clear he wasn't just a casual visitor. He looked over his shoulder as if to make sure no one was watching, then leaned in and spoke in a low, urgent tone. "You're in over your head," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "This isn't just about your ranch. This goes way beyond what you think." I froze. Every instinct told me to slam the door, but something told me this wasn't a random encounter. He continued, revealing more than I could have expected. Apparently, Karen and her group weren't just after the land for development. They were involved in something much darker. The land wasn't just valuable for the housing they wanted to build, it was sitting on top of something else, something they were desperate to get their hands on. This man claimed to have worked with the HOA in the past and was now terrified of the consequences of crossing them. According to him, there were old rumors about something buried on the land, a valuable resource hidden for decades that could change the entire area's future. The more I listened, the more it became clear this wasn't just a fight over land. They weren't just after my ranch. They were after something far more dangerous. Before I could ask him to explain further, he hurriedly looked behind him and whispered, "They know you're getting too close. You have to stop digging. For your own good." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night. I stood there, processing everything he'd said. Was this just a warning, or had I just stumbled into something far more treacherous than I could ever have imagined? The stakes were higher now. They weren't just trying to take my land. They would do anything to protect whatever secret they were hiding. And as much as I wanted to back off, something in me refused to walk away. I couldn't. Not now. But at what cost? The warning weighed on me, but I couldn't back down now. I had to know the truth, no matter how deep the rabbit hole went. The next day, I gathered all the evidence I had, footage, messages, everything, and decided to confront Karen directly. I showed up at the HOA office, ready to get the answers I needed. But when I stepped inside, something felt off. The office was dark, too quiet, and Karen wasn't there. Instead, I found a file on the desk, half open, as if someone had left in a hurry. My hands shook as I flipped through it. What I found stunned me. The file contained detailed plans, not just for the development, but for a major land acquisition deal. And buried in the middle of it all, a name I didn't expect. The man who had warned me. He was part of it all. He wasn't just trying to help me, he was trying to protect himself from being exposed. He had been an insider, part of the conspiracy, but now that he feared they'd come after him, he was desperate to cover his tracks. I couldn't believe it. The very person who had warned me had been playing both sides. But the worst part, it turned out he wasn't the only one. The HOA wasn't just acting on their own, they had powerful backers. People with connections, people who could make all of this disappear if it meant profiting from the land underneath me. My heart raced as I realized I was trapped in the middle of something far bigger than I could handle. Just as I was about to leave and figure out my next move, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I turned and there stood Karen, smiling, as if she had won. "Did you really think you could expose us?" she said, her voice dripping with smugness. "This has always been bigger than you." And just like that, the door behind her opened, and I saw a familiar face, a neighbor I had known for years, someone I trusted. He stepped forward, his expression cold. "It's over," he said. "You should have stayed out of this."